need to get out of this. So how do I get out of this? The participants. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Chapman, this takes me back to the campaign trail.
You better hush your mouth.
You are live. You are live.
You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click Livestream tab or watch us on Live Smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I am Damita Chatman, your host on Take a Stand for the next 2 hours. We are the worldwide community empowerment group. We are the ones that speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG Talk Radio and AMP at WCEG Network. The topics and opinions is those of the show hosts and guests and not talk radio show. Thank you. Continue to support. I want to thank all you guys for coming out this afternoon. All the judges, fine judges. First I'm going to start with Judge Johnson. Give us one brief and we'll go all the way down and then we'll get into the topics.
Thanks so much for having me, Ms. Chapman. My name is Judge Kenya Johnson. I am the probate judge in Fulton County, South Fulton resident, a community activist, and so excited for this new platform and very thankful to the Citizens for Excellence and elected officials for playing a major part in seating many of the judges here today. So thanks again.
Thank you. Judge Leftridge, you unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Ms. Damita Chatman. My name is Judge Melynee Leftridge, and I am, as of January 1st of this year, a newly elected Superior Court judge in Fulton County, along with my new colleague, Judge Shermela Williams. I'm honored to have been asked to be a part of this program today. I just love you, Damita Chatman. You're one of my favorite South Fulton community leaders, and when you ask me to do something, I'm going to try to do it if I can. And all of my colleagues here on the show, I look forward to this program with you today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and very interesting. Thank you.
Judge Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shermela Williams, and I am one of the 20 judges, along with Judge Leftridge, on the Fulton County Superior Court. I am currently assigned to the Family Division, so that's going to be an interesting mix in today's conversation. And I want to thank you all for having me here today, Ms. Penny, Ms. Damita. I want to personally say thank you because you all were very active in helping me get my message out to the community while we were on the election trail. So thank you so very much. And I look forward to today's broadcast.
Thank you. Judge Anderson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Anderson, and I am a state court judge in DeKalb County. I was appointed back in 2019. And I do want to thank Ms. Chapman for having me on. In my prior life as a business litigator for a small firm over in Midtown, I got to know Ms. Chapman when we were representing the citizens of South Fulton, when they were going through the cityhood and some annexation issues, and then worked with the city for a little bit as one of the city attorneys. So I'm so glad to be back speaking to Ms. Chapman. She was, I remember you there at my swearing in, and you and all the team over at South Fulton have just been so instrumental in my career. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Judge Sellers.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tiffany Carter Sellers. I was the first chief judge in the city of South Fulton's municipal court, and that's when I met Ms. Chapman. Gosh, 2017, Ms. Chapman, I think it must have been.
Yeah.
So appreciative of the support that she gave me and the court during our formation. I now serve as a pro temp judge in Forest Park, Union City, and Riverdale. And I'm excited about today's discussion with all of the wonderful judges on the panel. So thank you so much, Ms. Chapman, for inviting me.
Thank you. Judge Oliver.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Damita, for having me come on. When I got the call, I was quite elated about being on a platform with these wonderful ladies. I will say that I have been the Chief Municipal Court Judge in the City of East Point since 2003. I've been on the bench this March for 22 years. Yeah, for 22 years. So it's been an exciting run. I do serve as a part-time magistrate in Fulton County, but my primary focus is with the City of East Point. I do a lot in our community. I actually am co-founder of a nonprofit organization that gives scholarships to our youth and does educational awareness and financial awareness for the youth in the South Fulton area. We've just branched out now beyond our walls, so you may see some scholarship opportunities out there for people in other areas outside just South Fulton. But I'm excited. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I want to say thank you guys for taking the call. I got some questions, and we gonna dig in and ask you if you think I'm stepping over. Then you can say I can't answer that. But I believe that we're gonna stay in the realm of things. The first question I have is, what is the first step as a parent should take if their child becomes involved with the juvenile system? And we can start with, let's start with the guest of Fulton County. We're gonna start with Judge Oliver since she our guest today. Judge Oliver.
Yes, so the first thing I would think is just be open to communication. And I think that's where a lot of the parents, I have 6 children, so I've had to travel down that road to make sure that things are straight and help other people navigate that. But the biggest issue is the lack of communication that parents have with those who are in a position to assist them. And they're not looking for resources that are out there. The county has resources, I'm sure of it, but oftentimes it's a lack of communication and trying to find where those resources are. And communication goes both ways. So it's not just you talking, but you actually listening when people are giving you that information. So that I think would be the first thing that I would consider under those circumstances.
Thank you. Let's talk, take Judge Anderson.
Yeah, so I don't handle a ton with the juvenile system, but what I can say is I agree with Judge Oliver, communicating with the court system, reading the documents that they have received, making sure they stay on top of those court proceedings, because that can really shed light. I know a lot of my staff, I know probably everybody else's staff, if it's assigned to a particular judge, they're usually more than willing to help out. And depending on the, if they've been charged with something, I do always encourage people to either seek out the services of the public defender or seek out an attorney as soon as possible. That really can put you in the best position to move forward with your case. And I know we have a great public defender system here in DeKalb. I'm sure it's equally as great in Fulton County. And even if you don't end up hiring them or having them represent you, they can also provide you with the tools you need to move forward if it's seeking out a private attorney or going forth unrepresented.
Thank you. What about Judge Williams?
So I'm going to echo the sentiments of Judge Oliver and Judge Anderson. And so not to be redundant, here's what I'll add. Be open to the fact that your child may have done something wrong. So many times when I was a prosecutor and when I did criminal defense work, and I've actually worked in the juvie courts, I would have parents come in and tell me, oh, my child didn't do that. And here's why that can be hurtful to your child. The whole purpose of the juvenile justice system is to try to rehabilitate and stop kids before they transition over into the adult system. And so sometimes when parents are not even open to believing that their child did something wrong, broke the law, made a mistake that landed them in the system, it impedes the process, as in the child getting whatever services that the child need, because sometimes it's a cry for help, whether it be they need literacy services, they need drug and alcohol services, whatever it may be. So that would be one of my pieces to advice. Be open to the fact that your child may have done something wrong and they may need they may need interaction within the juvenile justice system to help them avoid the adult system and avoid going to go see Judge Leftridge, who on my screen is to my left.
Judge Johnson, thank you.
I want to add to what Judge Williams mentioned, and maybe it's to have your child assessed and to take advantage of some of the resources, because while their activities that brought them to juvenile court may be a cry for help, it may be that they were victimized in some way, or they are experiencing some trauma themselves, because hurt people hurt people. And so taking a holistic view of accountability, along with trying to get them as much help as possible so that you can get to the root of the issue, because young offenders without intervention become adult offenders. And so we certainly don't want that. So using the system and the resources are available to try to help.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. Judge Leftridge.
I think I'll simply add that whatever we all believe we know, I think as citizens about the court system, you may want to throw some of that out of the window when we're talking about the juvenile justice system. The court works in a completely different way than courts as we all sort of understand them to work. There are different variables, components, material parties, and actors that are there to support the court system and how it runs. And so becoming educated as a parent on the differences between your child being in, a traditional court system and juvenile court, I think would be important. And also, as everybody else has said, I think in some way, shape, or form, you got to communicate with your child's lawyer and be toe-to-toe with that lawyer. The lawyers that practice in juvenile court, they know juvenile court. And so they're going to be the best resource that you have in navigating that particular system.
Thank you, Judge Leftridge. Go to Judge Sellers.
So I think, everyone's comments, I think are spot on. The only thing that I would add is timeliness. So a lot of times, I think whether it's fear, lack of education, we tend to delay things when we need to jump on it immediately. So I think that the communication, communicating with the lawyers, making sure you understand what's going on, all of that needs to just be done quickly, right? Because time always, I find time is of the essence in any court system, any court case. Make sure that you are responding to things, make sure that you are timely in everything.
Thank you. Great. The next question I have, and I'm going to start with Judge Sellers on this. What laws are currently on the books to hold parents accountable for the actions of their minors?
Ooh, of course, you give me the hard one where I got to quote some law. Lord, Miss Chatman. So I am aware of a recent law. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to opine as to the lawfulness of the law, if that may not be a word, but I'm not going to opine as to whether I think the law is valid or anything. I'm just going to tell you what I've read. And I know that I think it was last week or maybe the week before, East Point instituted a new rule regarding the Camp Creek Marketplace and parents' accountability for children there. Again, as judges, I know none of us can express our opinions as to the law, but that is one that I know has been written relatively recently, and I'm not certain that a lot of people are aware of it. I know it's been circulating on social media, but outside of that, I really don't know. But that is one that I am very keenly aware of. I know in South Fulton, some years back, they tried to do something similar. I don't believe that actually passed, but it was something kind of similar to what East Point is doing I guess the law is designed to hold parents accountable for children's actions. But I'm going to put the period right there.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go with Judge Leftridge.
Well, I'm going to say I'm not going to step too far out of my realm on this. I feel like I'm in law school right now. The way you asked that question and called on us like this. So are you taking me back about 30 years on this with the way in which you have done this? I'm just going to co-sign with Judge Sellers. I'm going to tell you that as a South Fulton resident, I am also aware of the recent news stories and the issues that are occurring in the Camp Creek Marketplace area. So by virtue of the news and being a concerned citizen myself, I am aware of that. But by virtue of what I do for a living, I am not. So I don't want to step outside and just start talking for the sake of talking, because that's not what I do. So I'm gonna put my period right here and say, when the laws come before me, I become educated on the laws more in a different way. And so that's all. That's what I'll say to you about that.
I accept that one. Judge Anderson?
You know, from a state standpoint, I know that parents can be, or at least there's laws on the books that can hold parents civilly responsible for the actions of their children. I do think it's a high standard to meet. And high bar, I mean, I think it usually has to be the malicious kind of intent on behalf of the child. And then I think also, you know, there are truancy laws where a parent can become involved in as far as the child not attending school and things like that. So and that's really on the school side. I will say I don't handle very much of that in my own courtroom, so I'm acting very dangerously here. But as far as my limited knowledge, that I do know that there are situations that arise where those are situations where parents can be held responsible for their children's actions.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Judge Kenya Johnson.
Okay, well, so it depends on what angle that you're asking the question from. As you are aware, there are laws on the books that refer to endangering a child. So if you're putting a child in a dangerous situation where they're ultimately committing a crime, there could be some responsibility on the adults that put them in their situation. And also, as a 20-year prosecutor, I'm going to say party to a crime, because sometimes we do things and put our children in positions where we're actually assisting them in some of their criminal behavior. If you bought your child a gun, or you're leaving a gun recklessly available for them, then you could also be complicit in that crime as a parent. So it all depends on if we're talking about an innocent parent that is struggling with a child that has gone astray, or if we're talking about a parent that is actually participating in the juvenile's activities. Either way can find the parent also in hot water.
Thank you. Judge Williams?
So I am going to echo the sentiments of everyone else. And the only thing I'm going to add to Judge Johnson's comments is that it depends specifically on the conduct and the involvement of the parent and the facts of the situation. So I don't think there's a cookie cutter, well, if a parent does this, then it's automatically that. You have to be very careful about that, which is why I oftentimes tell people that your Google search is not a substitute for the law degree that so many of us put ourselves in debt to get. So just be aware that ignorance of the law is not a defense of the law.
Thank you. Judge Oliver?
So thank you for the question. It's not something that I would want to go into detail, because these cases might actually come before me because they are local ordinances. But the curfew law has been on the books for many, 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 many years in the city of East Point. That's nothing new. What's new is the time. So you're moving from 11 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That's what was new. I think, though, what is most important about that parents need to understand is to have the chaperone responsibility. And that's not something that's law, that's something that the store owners are doing themselves, requiring that if someone's under a certain age, that they come into their store, that they're accompanied by an adult. And I think that helps. I think the plan from my outside perspective was not so much to criminalize, but to have someone that's responsible for these young people when they're out in these areas. So from a parental standpoint, I'll speak on that. You know, I'm used to being responsible for my child and what my child is doing and where my child is. And I think that was the goal that was intended. I've not seen these cases, so I certainly wouldn't want to speak on how they would be presented in court, whether it's legal or whether it's not. Those are things that as the cases come, you deal with them one at a time. But holding parents responsible, I think at this point is aspirational until the law is broken, and then we'll figure it out then.
All right, thank you. Okay, since you kind of hit on my next question, I'm just going to go on and give that. Do you think parents should be held accountable for the actions of the juvenile offenders? I'm gonna start with Judge Oliver, since she kind of touched a little bit, and then we'll work ourselves around.
From a judicial standpoint, I wouldn't answer that question. I think it would be inappropriate for me to answer unless that case comes before. Each case that comes before us is going to be fact specific to itself. And so I don't want to answer it from that perspective. Do I think parents should be responsible for where their children are at the time that they are there? Absolutely. Do I think it needs to be something criminal? It depends on what's happened. And so as those cases come before us as judges, as with any other case that comes before us, we have to take it based on the facts presented and the law that we apply to it. So as they come, I think that's where I would stand. I don't know about the other judges, but as a parent of 6 children, I think it was ultimately my responsibility to know where my children were, how they were conducting themselves. Now, did they pull some over on me? Absolutely. There's no way that out of 6 of them that I came out squeaky clean. I'm still hearing things now that I never heard before, that they are now of age of not being chastised. So trust that all parents may be doing all that they possibly can, and children are still going to do the things that they do. So when we say, are we holding them accountable? There's a difference between holding a parent accountable when they've done everything they can right by their child and the child is just doing something foolish, versus someone who has neglected their child and neglected to parent their child. Those are people going to be treated differently, obviously, and you won't know that until they come in front of you and present, and the case is presented by the prosecutors. Ultimately, it's the prosecutor's case to bring. It's our case, our opportunity is to sit in judgment and make sure that we're being fair and just to the people who come in front of us.
Thank you. Judge Williams.
Well, Ms. Chapman, I'm going to save you some time because I think you're probably going to get the same, if not very similar answers from all of us, because we can't comment on issues of law that may come before us, or we can't give personal opinions, so to speak, as sitting judges. Otherwise, the JQC will be coming after us for all of our jobs.
Yep.
And y'all have to get us elected. You don't want to put us off.
No, and I like that, because sometimes I use the phrase the street committee. You know, street committee want to be judges. So thank you guys so much. Let's talk about domestic violence. How much have you seen that in the COVID-19? I'm gonna go with Judge Johnson first.
So I think that's a great question. Prior to being elected as probate court judge, I was a prosecutor in Fulton County on both the felony and misdemeanor level. And I will tell you that in 2020, we saw a rise in domestic violence calls, so much so that we put out the Fulton County Solicitor General's office put out a PSA to remind people that we're still operational during COVID. I think as tensions rise and people are sheltering in place, for some people, home is not a safe place. For victims of sexual abuse, home is not a safe place. For battered and abused spouses, it's not a safe place. And so it is important for the criminal justice system to reach out to those silent victims and let them know that we're still around, but we are seeing an uptick, and it doesn't seem as if it's slowing down as of February 2020.
Okay. What you think about that, Judge Anderson?
I 100% agree. You know, I was not on the bench much before the pandemic hit. I was there for about 3 months, but the majority of, I have a calendar called, it's my jail calendar every week. So it's the individuals who have not posted bond at that point, and really kind of listen to what those stories, the majority of them are battery family violence cases. And I like to tell individuals I deal with misdemeanors. That's my jurisdiction. I tell everybody I deal everything but felonies and family law. That's kind of the realm. But what's important about that is I kind of see defendants as they enter the criminal justice system. I see these domestic violence issues, and it starts with a push. They're in on a push. Then all of a sudden they have punched a wall, and then it escalates. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, I've seen not only frequent, like almost it's coming back more frequently to same individuals, and then also the severity of the situations have also have gotten worse. And I think Judge Johnson really kind of touched on that. People feel trapped. It's not only physically, but also with the financial situations, and it's really creating a pressure cooker for a lot of families right now.
What you got to say about that, Judge Sellers?
So I would agree. Part of what I do as a pro temp judge and for these other cities is sign warrants. And so you hear very, very heart-wrenching stories about activities and actions that occur. I think what Judge Anderson said, it's not just physical restraint, but the economics of the pandemic has created a situation where any underlying frustrations and tensions have only been magnified by the lack of financial and economic resources and certainty. And it's unfortunate. The fallout from COVID, I think, extends far beyond even what we know to be the financial impacts. And I'm not really certain how it's going to how they're going to fix it, how it's going to be addressed. Because even when, things get back to what we will call our new normal, I think that some of these financial and economic hardships may be permanent for a lot of people, which will only serve to increase some of what we're seeing in the criminal justice system.
Okay. Thank you, Judge Leftridge. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. We've seen an uptick in violent crime all across the county, an uptick in aggravated assaults, an uptick in aggravated batteries, and an uptick in murder cases as well. And a fair percentage, I would say, of those are rooted in some form of domestic violence issues. We have crimes against women, we have crimes against men in domestic violence settings, we have crimes against children in domestic violence settings, and we have crimes against animals, cruelty against animals, because usually or sometimes what the abuser will do is take something like the dog or the cat and use that against the victim because that's something that the victim cares about. So as a result of the pressure cooker in the household that COVID has created, we've seen it manifest itself in different ways. And so the question is an awesome question, Ms. Chatman, because it is so real to what's going on right now out in our communities. The request for TRO relief, all of those things have gone up as well, since the onset of the pandemic. So we're seeing it. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna start with Kenya Johnson Judge Kenya Johnson on this one.
Ms. Chatman, I'm sorry. May I answer that question just from the family perspective?
Oh, yes, please, Judge.
So as I said, I'm assigned to the family division in Fulton County. And so in the family division, literally the only things I hear on a day in, day out basis are divorces, child custody disputes, child support, modification, legitimations, paternities, tests, and contempt orders when it comes to family issues. And what we have seen with regard to the domestic violence question you have asked is a huge uptick in divorces. And what we have also seen is a huge uptick in the amount of folks who are getting divorced because of either some kind of, just one, they just don't want to be together anymore because COVID has shown them that they don't like each other anymore. But two, the domestic violence piece of it. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the family court has a general intersection, so to speak, with civil, criminal, family, and domestic law, so to speak, well, family and domestic. And where you see that oftentimes is folks going to get restraining orders or temporary protection orders during the course of a divorce or right before a divorce is filed. And we're also seeing an uptick of those where it comes to parents getting those on behalf of the children. For instance, dad takes out a TPO against mom because mom has been abusing the kids, or vice versa. So I think that what everyone has said about the pressure cooker and understanding the other impacts of COVID, not just financially and socially, but also in the home, those are huge, even when you look at the family structure and how it is being impacted and how that is funneling its way through the court system by way of not just the criminal piece, but also divorces, child support, all of that.
Okay, great. That was great. I'm gonna start with Judge Johnson. And I often hear you talk about make sure you got a will and all your paperwork. So what can you say, and I'm gonna say this to our Black community, because sometimes that's what we fall short at. We don't have our wills, we don't have our insurance. So Judge Johnson, what can you speak on that?
Sure. Well, during COVID-19, we're seeing a record number of deaths. And what does that mean? A record number of estate filings in probate court as people look to settle their estates. And we're also seeing a record number of what's called no administration necessaries, and also cases where someone is looking to open an estate without a will. And when you don't have a will, then your estate is going to be distributed according to the laws of Georgia. And that may not be the way you wanted your items to go. And so a will gives people an opportunity to express their wishes, to provide for their family, and to account for their the physical property that they have that you can't take with you. So what advice I have for all races, because death knocks on death doesn't care about the race, is that you begin to plan ahead. Share your wishes with your family. Do you want to be buried or cremated? How do you want that paid for? Where are your accounts? What do you have in your retirement? And also let those beneficiaries know so that they can seek those items if you should pass away without a will. But it's always best to plan ahead, to write down your wishes, get it notarized, and get it witnessed by two independent people that will not take anything from the will. And this is something that you can handwrite at home. This is something that you can type up. Many resources are available online, but just take a moment, do an inventory of your life and your belongings and who you wish to provide for when you're no longer here, and the rest will follow.
And don't forget advanced medical directives too, Judge Johnson.
Absolutely. And so we've got a plan for what happens if we become to a point where we're sick and we need someone to handle our finances while we're still alive and to make medical decisions on our behalf. We have formed a village. However, sometimes that village includes people that are not of blood relation to you. It may be a neighbor or a friend that you want to handle your finances. Express those things and think about what happens when you can no longer speak for yourself. Thank you, Judge Williams. And that's something that everyone should get, because you never know when you will fall ill. So we're talking about advanced healthcare directives. We're talking about a power of attorney or durable power of attorney, which kicks in when you can't express yourself. All these different layers will protect you, your finances, and your family.
If I can respond. All right. Mm-hmm. So having had an opportunity to speak with some business owners and expressing to them that if they have not put their will in place, that basically they served to have their business fail. And so what we've seen is there are some business owners who have passed away and their families are devastated because they don't know how to run the business. And so now the only source of income that they had, which was that business, is no longer functioning. And so sometimes we think about it only from a perspective of what does our family get, but not necessarily how is this business going to continue, because we've not put anything in place to deal with that from our will, from the business plan, or any other perspective that you want to look at it from. So since we have so many people, African Americans and otherwise, becoming entrepreneurs now in the state that we're in, losing their jobs and having to reinvent and recreate themselves, the job market's changing significantly in the types of jobs that people can get. If you're going into business on your own, you need to have these things in place. You need to be kicking down the door of an attorney or getting a piece of paper like Judge Johnson says and writing it down and getting your witnesses so people know how to advance your business so that your whole family doesn't suffer at that loss.
Thank you. Judge Leftridge, could you tell us what kind of cases do you handle coming before you, and what would you tell the community as a whole?
Well, the cases that I'm seeing as a Superior Court judge are those rooted in the criminal arena and the civil arena, but specifically, they are felony criminal cases. Those are cases that carry a sentence of 1 year or greater in terms of the punishment. And that can be 1 year probation or 1 year in jail and greater. I am handling cases involving real estate, like foreclosure cases, matters like that affect families. I am handling civil cases that are rooted in breach of contract, A versus B sign a contract and somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and then the other person sues them. I am handling cases that are based in tort, like your personal injury cases. And I'm sure Judge Anderson sees a whole bunch of those in the way of car accident cases and medical malpractice cases. Those are the kinds of cases that are being filed also in Superior Court of Fulton County. And we are handling those cases, most of us, still by Zoom. Mm-hmm. So it's been a very, very interesting undertaking to come into office during this particular time and sort of picking up the new way of doing things so that we can maintain some degree of safety. So, for example, Ms. Chatman, on my criminal calendars, I'm limited to how many jail cases I can see. I only have a handful that I can see in person brought over from the jail for safety purposes. During the rest of the week, I have designated times, as do the rest of the Superior Court judges, where I can see jail cases by Zoom, because the courtrooms at the jail can only accommodate so many people for safety reasons at a time. And so all of us are sharing a couple of hours, a couple of times a month to see maybe 8 people by Zoom at the jail for those jail cases. The bond cases, we are trying to get all of those onto Zoom, right? But because COVID has caused people to move in different places and just sort of get lost out in the world because they've had to change residences, it is sometimes difficult for their lawyers to track folks down. So we're having to sort of navigate, whether or not a bench warrant is appropriate or whether or not someone needs a little bit more time to try to find their client because they got lost in the COVID year. And so those are the kinds of challenges that we're experiencing from a criminal standpoint. On the civil side, because things sort of were stayed or stopped on that side of what we do as well, we're having a lot of calendars. We're putting together a lot of calendars where we're trying to put people on notice that, hey, your case has been a little bit stagnant. We want to know, are you going to serve this person with this lawsuit, or are you going to give it up? We're going to give you some more time to try to find this person so you can serve them so that we can have a real action. And for people who have been served, hey, you didn't file an answer to the lawsuit. We're in default now. Let's set a trial or a hearing on Zoom so that someone can, and you and the other person can fight for your damages on Zoom. And we're dealing with, before I let out, because it's so wildly interesting to me that we are actually moving forward and doing the work for the people, notwithstanding the pandemic. And we are trying to find ways as judges how do you accept evidence? The way it is in the courtroom, one person walks to the other person, shows them the document, and Your Honor, we'd like to get this into evidence, and they go through the steps to do that. But we're on Zoom, all right? So how are we gonna do this, right? And so we're coming up with creative ways to try to preserve the integrity of what we do, but do it in this way. So I'm excited about what has been done and what we intend to do going forward in moving the ends of justice, even in this pandemic.
Okay, I got a question that came through Facebook. Why is Miss Penny? Could you put that back up there for me, please? The criminal element is moving so progressively through the county right now. And Judge Sellers, let you answer that.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. Let's go back to that question. I'm going to find. She'll put the question back up, but let me go to Judge Sellers and talk about them warrants that you give folks. Just say if you can't find them, what you do about that warrant? I want to hear about the warrant.
So a couple of things. First, thankfully, I am not responsible for finding anybody, right? So we're gonna let the police do police work, and I am not a police officer, so we're gonna leave that to the people who handle that well. So I don't. I listen to the evidence. I listen to the probable cause and make that determination. But I did, if it's okay, I did kind of want to jump back to what Judge Leftridge was talking about.
Come on.
About the Zoom. So in South Fulton, as you know, Judge Oliver and East Point were amazing partners to us in allowing us to utilize their facilities from time to time. And so we had to get really creative. Before COVID, we were doing things via Zoom and all of that, just because we had to, right? And so it is a very different way of practicing law. I have, I'm also an attorney. I've appeared before Judge Anderson via Zoom. And so this is a very interesting time, even for lawyers. But what I think, and what I actually hope, is that we can perfect this process such that we utilize it even when COVID is over. Things become so, as a lawyer and as a judge, but as a lawyer, things are so much more hyper efficient. If I can sit in my office and work on other things instead of sitting in a courtroom on a 2-hour calendar call, right? I mean, all of us in our lawyer days have had those experiences, and those were 2 to 3 hours of our lives that we can never get back. But we could not be productive because we were sitting there with our phones off, obeying the court rules. And so I do hope that there is a way, and I'm certain that no one is thinking about this now, right? Because we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, kind of pick up the pieces and build something that we can move forward on. But it is my hope that at some point we can reevaluate how to effectively utilize and leverage our technology such that we can be hyper efficient even going forward. That will do nothing but serve the public. Certainly, if you're a civil litigator and your client is paying you by the hour, that will absolutely serve their pocket. And then even if you're a criminal defense attorney or a prosecutor, the ability to be able to navigate your calendars in your office or wherever it is that you find yourself working, leveraging the technology that we have, I think can bolster us, into the future and really make the courts, all courts, regardless of the class, hyper efficient.
Thank you. Judge Anderson, I'm gonna give you this one because why is crime getting progressively throughout the counties? That's because I know everybody here is from Fulton County, you DeKalb County. So let's hear from you first on that.
So it looks like progressively worse. And I think it's something that we touched on earlier is just really the pandemic. I think everybody is feeling extra stressed, not only, extra stressed financially, extra stressed mentally, really feeling like they have no place to, be social, to get that fulfillment that you would normally have in these times. And I think that's really just what is causing an increase in violent crimes throughout the counties. And unfortunately, not unfortunate, but, moving our system because we're Zoom, there's only so much we can do on our criminal system here on Zoom. Defendants have constitutional rights to be in the courtroom. They have a constitutional right to confront their witnesses, confront them live. And so, that's kind of causing this whole backlog that we're having. So it's not just the pressure cooker of the pandemic, but also, just our backlog that I think it's just kind of causing a lot of situations. And by the way, I know I keep saying pressure cooker. I just would also like to say I am a big fan of that in cooking as well. So I'm going to keep using that analogy.
Thank you. Let me ask you, during this COVID-19, how do you feel about people getting evicted from their homes, can't pay their rent, but yet those bills is coming in and these the mortgage company wants their money? How do you feel about in those situations?
Can I answer that, please? Could I answer that?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Just to say this. We are all human beings on this Zoom call, and we all have feelings, and we all have family, and we all have friends, and we all have hearts. And our job sometimes asks for us to shelve some of that and follow the law. And so by virtue of the fact that we're all judges on this call, the nature of your very good question is difficult to answer, because we have to do what the law instructs us to do as we perceive that. We have to do that and temper that as human beings with good sense and a wide range of discretion to do it in the most humane way possible. But we still have to follow the law. And landlord-tenant law in this state can oftentimes lean itself more to the landlord than the tenant. And that's the reality of the laws that we are given and constrained to follow. The question is particularly sensitive for me because a few years ago, I remember being assigned to dispossessory court around the Christmas holiday season. And I'm sure those of us who are handled dispo, it feels not good, okay, to see a family lose their place to live any time of the year, but particularly during the holidays with children and, and elderly parents. And, it feels not good to sign those orders, but it is what we were elected to do. It's what it is part of our job. And so I think we all do our job and try to bring with it as much sensitivity as possible, but still do the job in the way in which the job is to be done. So that's my long answer to your short question, Ms. Chatman, on that.
And I'll piggyback after just real quick is, I think for a while their evictions were stayed. I'm not sure if they opened back up or not, but there were evictions that were stayed by Governor Kemp. And I think even President Biden has issued some orders. But to also piggyback off of what Judge Leftridge said, when we see a problem, a lot of times the court system is going to step up and try to create a resource for citizens. try to create eviction programs, try to help people navigate those resources to help them out, especially during these difficult times. I know DeKalb recently has rolled out numerous programs trying to help tenants during these hard times and help give them the financial help they need to make it through. And so, like Judge Leftridge said, while we have to follow the law, that is what we were sworn in to do. A lot of times we can take a step outside and think, okay, so this is what I have to do in this case, but for the citizens as a whole, here's what I see this problem, and I want to help it outside my role as a judge, as a citizen of DeKalb, as a citizen of Fulton. We're here to help you and give you the resources that you need.
Okay,
So if I
Judge,
can, I'm sorry.
thank you. Judge Johnson wanted to give a response to that question.
I want to say that I've noticed as a prosecutor that when the economy goes down, crime goes up. And so you asked a question a while back about crime getting progressive in the counties. It's because the economy is suffering. And so people are responding to that. And as it was mentioned by Judge Alexander, that it is important that we have resources and that the counties are responding to that. And so when we talk about landlord-tenant law, I think in this general legislative session, we're going to see the law reacting to the times. Lots of things that used to require in-person attestation or someone to come in person, a lot of those things are going to be relaxed. That's just one small example of how the law has to now respond to the pandemic that we're seeing. And then the question for the legislature and for the courts is how much do we respond permanently for what we hope is a temporary situation? I can see Zoom hearings and less of a footprint in the courthouse going beyond COVID. I think the order of the day is looking for ways for people to handle business remotely and handle court remotely. So I think certain things from the pandemic is here to stay, but how much do we adjust and change and affect the laws for something that may not be here long-term, that we pray and hope is a temporary situation? So we're having to balance permanent solutions with temporary solutions based on the resources. No more money has come into the society as a result of the pandemic. So we're having to reallocate the resources that were already pretty much planned for other aspects of life. So I don't envy our legislators. I don't envy our judges who have to carry out these laws, because that's what we're responsible for doing. But we've got to find a better way in light of the current times.
Right.
And so
Let me ask you.
If I can address that.
Yes, Judge.
Because I sit as both a municipal and a magistrate, and I probably have 191, Judge Leftridge, of those in my queue to finish before February 26th, which is 191 people who might actually be evicted. The reality of that is, but I will say that the courts have done some things that some have done very small, but during this time of COVID, I've noticed that they have done significantly more in reaching outside of themselves to see what resources they can summon to help people. What I have seen is that people are not asking for the help. The websites have all of this information and all of these agencies. At the end of December, there were still agencies trying to throw money at people to help them not get evicted that was going unused and was going to be given back to the government. So it's not so much that the courts aren't doing that extra step outside of making sure we follow the law and do our job, because those are social services in general that we're not responsible for, but we've brought those resources to bear where those agencies can come in and say, okay, we'll help if they apply. But when 90% of the people you see don't even apply, the resources are there. They're not seeking them. They're not using them.
So let me ask you, Judge Oliver, and that's a good, do you think that they're not asking because they don't know, or, pride sometimes gets in the way? Is it pride or they just don't know?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think people don't know where to look for things. And so it's easy for us to say, as my kids say, I always tell them, just Google it. It's easy for those of us who have a computer to just Google it. But once I Google it, do I have the aptitude to understand what I'm looking at? And so there's so many different ways that we can address that. There are agencies that go in and help these people who have these type problems. The resources are out there. I think Pride is some, because sometimes Pride will let you wait until the very end when you can't do anything else about it. You ask, but you ask too late, which is that procrastination and the ostrich syndrome that I think when people stick their head in the sand and expect everything to be good when they bring it back out, and then there's an animal waiting to chop it off. I think it's important to understand that there are resources out there, but you have to seek them and you have to ask for them. And some people don't know how to seek.
Right.
Ms. Chapman, if I may.
Yes, Judge Williams.
I think another thing is we oftentimes take for granted that everybody has technology at their fingertips. There are a whole lot of folks who do not have the internet. My grandparents being one of them. And so, my grandfather died in December. So we've been, as a family, really having to step it up to go and sit with my grandmother during the day, to rotate out, et cetera. And it was very, very piercing to me, because of course, I never really thought about the fact that my grandparents don't have the internet at their house. But my grandmother will be 80 this year. She does not have a cell phone. She does not have a computer. She does not have the internet. She has no need for it or no usage for it in her mind. I don't even really think she knows what it is. The other day, she told me to send one of those messages that us young folks are always sending to my cousin. And what she was referring to was a text message, of course, because she sees us texting and whatnot. But one of the things that we've, as a family, had to do to help make this work is actually put internet in her house, by way of her cable or by way of hotspots or whatever. So I think as a society, we take for granted that everybody has the internet. And so one of the things that Fulton County has done, which I thought was a great idea, was they have put workstations throughout the courthouse. Because another thing we're seeing on Zoom is that everybody doesn't have a computer. And for some folks, they don't necessarily have smartphones. And I know that for a while, there was a time when Xfinity was offering free internet, and there were some other services that were offering free internet. But a lot of folks aren't doing that anymore. So we've got to also understand that that internet piece, where you go look for stuff, is sometimes hard for some folks. And it's not just our elderly community, it's also our our impoverished community. And the libraries, when we talk about, are the libraries open? Frankly, I don't know. And I'm just going to be completely honest. I have not been to a library in years, but for meeting a client or someone there who, when this was when I was a prosecutor, who didn't want to be seen in the community talking to a prosecutor. And so, we may meet in the parking lot or something, or there may have been a community function that was there. But since COVID, certainly I have not been to the library. And so what we've got to do is find a way to get the information to the community, because as Judge Oliver said, I know United Way had millions of dollars, even at the top of this year, that they still have not been able to get away because they don't have enough folks who are applying for those funds. And then number two, the application process requires certain things that folks don't necessarily have. So it's a chicken and an egg that has a cyclical effect on how folks are able to get those resources and the red tape that sometimes they have to go through.
Okay, let me ask you a question. And this, any judge can answer this, or you all can answer it. Have you thought about programs that help not only the young folks, but the adults that's coming back and forth through your court systems? What kind of programs can be put in place to help these individuals?
So I'll answer that first. I was very vocal on the campaign trail about making sure that we were putting things in place to help with the school to prison pipeline, as well as other issues that are going on in our community. One of the things I think that we do as a great job as a community is starting a program. But what we don't necessarily do a great job of is sustaining that program or making that program really efficient. And so one of the things that I've said I wanted to do is look at programs that are already existing and see how I could partner with those programs to make them better, to make them more efficient, to bring them to the community in some aspect or another. So that's one thing. And then the second part of that is looking to what the needs of the community are. If your community doesn't need a soup kitchen, it does not behoove us to open a soup kitchen. So we also need to make sure that whatever programs that we're putting in place or that we are putting into the community are programs that the community actively needs. I'm a member of Impact Church, and one of the things that we looked at was in that Tri-Cities area, what are the needs of the community? And literacy, housing insecurity, food deserts were huge needs, right? And so if you're looking at the needs of the community, you got to make sure that whatever programming we're putting in place is addressing the needs of the community and not just making us feel good because we're doing something to help the community.
I like that. Judge Anderson, you want to say something?
Yeah, so actually similar to Judge Williams, really trying to look at what programs we have here in DeKalb. We have a lot of programs, but I think also what I've been trying to see is really trying to work on a referral network to have, where people can say, for example, I have what we call our child abandonment calendar. Under Georgia law, if the state can bring an action against a parent who is not contributing financially to the needs of a child. So I have these defendants, it's almost like an accountability court. They come into my courtroom, we talk about if they've made any payments, try to get them on track as far as supporting their children. But one thing I've noticed is, they'll go through these programs to try to find employment, but then they just don't really have that next step. And so now I'm looking at, okay, well, what if I start a mentoring program in connection with a work source or trying to figure out what they want to do? Having someone there who's going to say, all right, did you get your resumes in? All right, let's do some prep work for your interviews. Let's get you on track. And kind of working with them because there's like Judge Williams said, there's a lot of programs out there that are doing great work, but I've come to find out that it's very disjointed, and to have something where we're all working together to really help better the lives of the citizens of our community. That's really my goal as a judge. And I've also said, I get defendants at the outset. Like I feel like I get them right when they're initiating into the criminal justice system. And it's my job, or I view my job is to help, I say, to go upstairs, to go to Superior Court. I want to make sure they get their needs met immediately, address the problem right here. I don't want to see them come back. I don't want to see them go upstairs. I want them to feel like they were heard, that they feel like their needs were addressed, and be a productive citizen in the county.
Okay. Let me, Judge Leftridge.
I have an initial planning meeting actually for March 10th with the community leader with respect to a program that I talked about during my judicial campaign, where I wanted to partner, and Judge Anderson might be interested in this as a state court judge in DeKalb. One of the initiatives I wanted to put in place was to take one person from each of our state court judges, our Fulton County state court judges, who they believe is someone that they could send to me, that I could meet with once or twice a month, have them come and view. I mean, COVID has sort of jacked this up a little bit, but my thought process is I wanted to have a small circle of young men and women who had committed a few misdemeanors and were seen by state court judges that they could send to me, and that we could have a small group of about 10 or 12 of these young citizens to come and view our criminal felony court on a routine basis. And we would sit down afterwards and have a discussion about what they've seen, what the consequences are, and how they don't want to end up, coming upstairs, as Judge Anderson just so eloquently put it. And so we're having a beginning planning session on that on March 10th, as a matter of fact. And so hopefully once we get up and running past some of this COVID, I can actually put some teeth into that program.
Thank you. I know Judge Sellers had a program, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judge Sellers, I might be really wrong. You had a program bringing the young kids into the court system, learning them and teaching them the steps of the court system. Do you guys see that program going after COVID-19?
So obviously, I'm sorry. So obviously, I can't speak to South Fulton, but one of the reasons why I wanted to start that program was because, you know, unlike many of these ladies on this call, the first time that I ever met an African-American judge was when I was in college. I wanted to become a judge because, I wanted to become a lawyer because I watched Claire Huxtable on Thursday nights as The Cosby Show growing up. I just never saw it. It was never a part of my routine, my growing up years, as they say. I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, which is a very, very urban environment. And we just didn't see it. And I believe that when children and when young people can see themselves better than where they are right now, they can make the changes that they need to make to be successful going forward, right? They can make the adjustments in their behavior. They can make their adjustments in schooling. They can make all of those adjustments if they can just see what they want to be going forward. And so I view my role as one where I could help young people like me see myself beyond. I never would have imagined I'd be a judge. Never in my wildest dreams, growing up in Paterson, New Jersey, did I ever think it was possible for me to be a judge. And so I want other people to have that same experience. You know, when you were talking about these great programs, in South Fulton, they had a program, Second Chance South Fulton. It was the diversion program. That program had a 0% recidivism rate. 0. That means that not a single person who came through that program ever repeated. You know why? Because every person was taken as an individual and their individual needs were met. Now, obviously in superior courts and state courts, some of the activity is a little too severe for that sort of program, right? So municipal courts, you're dealing with traffic offenses, minor misdemeanors, those sorts of things. You know, certainly murder may not, it doesn't necessarily fit into the Second Chance South Fulton program. But there is this opportunity to figure out what the root cause is and address it, right? If it's that you need a job, let's figure it out. If it's that you didn't finish school so you can't read, because we've learned that too. Well, let's figure that out. If it's that you feel like you have to steal. I mean, there are people in municipal courts, and I know Judge Oliver can speak to this. Municipal courts are full of shoplifting cases where people are stealing food. We're not talking about stealing like a sandwich from Publix. Or, you know, I never forget there was a person who stole one of those, what is it, hot dog on a stick things? I don't know what, corn dog, whatever those things are called. Stole a box of corn dogs. But because of the way that Georgia law is, you know, the law says a certain number of theft by shoplifting charges lands you to a felony, right? So what that means is a $3.99 box of corn dogs that you were stealing because you were hungry can give you a year in jail. If it is, you know, if you're on that trajectory. So I think we've got to figure out individually what people's needs are and address the need.
Thank you. Judge Johnson, you want to ask, you say you had a good answer for that.
Well, we're talking about two different types of offenders. We're talking about those violent offenders and those non-violent offenders. And as Judge Sellers mentioned, for those that are simply trying to survive, there are resources. To be honest, there's not many resources for those that have preyed upon our community and are instituting violence. I remember back in South Fulton around 2015, there was a huge burglary pandemic. They were kicking in doors all over. And so as a community prosecutor, we met with 30 burglary defendants at the Fulton County Jail. And we asked them, for real, tell us honestly, what made you burglarize that house? And why are you burglarizing houses? Number one answer was they looked for the easiest targets, those houses that didn't have storm doors, security doors. The second answer was, we need a job. And so it is under the belief that people want to be productive citizens in society. And so we have to create those opportunities that they can be productive citizens, because according to this group of what some people would consider criminals, they were doing it out of a survival mode for their family. So how can we help people to survive? We're not talking about thriving, or we're not talking about being excessive, but to survive. And we have to do more programs that help people survive. When it comes to resources for young people, with the National Black Prosecutors Association, we had a program called Real Talk About the Law, where we went into schools, the at-risk schools, and spoke to them about some of the common childhood mistakes. We're talking about stealing. We're talking about, snatching someone's cell phone. Well, that's robbery. But in their mind, it was just, I'm snatching someone's cell phone. He keep it for a couple of days. So just educating them about the law and how things can go from jokey, we're gonna rob the pizza delivery guy, to a 20-year bid, downstate. And so we also had another program with the Solicitor General's office called Guns Down, Heads Up. And we brought together 750 high schools from South Fulton, APA and Fulton County, at the Georgia International Convention Center. We did that in partnership with the the Black Law Enforcement Executives officials called Noble. And so continuously partnering with community organizations and our corporate partners, Chick-fil-A, Atlanta Hawks, they were all a part of it. We bust in 750 students. And while that's just a drop in the bucket for the 20,000 students that are here in the metro area, it takes one step at a time. And those key partnerships that continue to educate and inform, and providing resources. We put a lot of money into the criminal justice system, but if you notice, programming is paid for by the county. So see, the state pays for jail time, but the county pays for the programming. So when you hear someone like a governor say, we're going to we're not going to put young people in custody, well, what you're doing is you're putting them out on the street and then putting it on the county to pay for the programming. So it's you pay for them, no, you pay for them, no, you pay for them. Sounds good, but if there's no resources available, then all we're doing is putting violent offenders out to the communities that they're terrorizing. So is there an answer? No. But do we need to be smart on crime? Yes. Another quick example is when I was a community prosecutor. We had businesses complaining about people loitering outside of their business, hanging out, robbing people, and so forth. Did a little bit of research and came to find out that in Seattle, the way that they avoided disorderly conduct or loitering was that they had the business owners to play classical music outside of their business. Now, this was a no-cost solution. You play classical music outside of the liquor store, and guess what? People come in, get their liquor, and leave. That hanging out, they're not going to do that playing Bach or, Beethoven. So, let's be smart about it. These are free things.
I like
you got
that.
a house and you don't want someone to burglarize it. You go buy a big beware of dog and a big dog plate and put it outside your door. That's about $10, but it scares any potential burglars from coming to your house because they think there's a big dog inside. Even buy a little food and sprinkle it around. I mean, these just I'm being a little silly, but you got to be creative in ways to solve these issues. And so we just got to put our heads together.
Thank you. The question that we're going to tackle now is the teen record of expungement. Tell us a little bit about that. We got about 25 minutes before we wrap up or less, and then we're going to go into your closing. We got to get you guys back because you're awesome. But let's talk about that teen record and expungement. What happens when they do a crime? We're gonna start with Kenya, and then we're gonna work ourselves back down. Okay, and I'm sorry, Judge Johnson.
And I'll be brief. As people know, you don't get a criminal record until you turn 17. A juvenile record is sealed, but once you turn 17, it's on your record forever. Any arrest and any disposition, and we're not talking about it dropping off your report like a credit report after 7 years. So there's the expungement method. This allows for certain qualified qualified nonviolent arrest to be removed from your record if there's no conviction. People don't realize that if you took a plea and pled and said guilty, then that's not eligible for expungement. But the good thing is that starting in 2021, some nonviolent offenses and convictions do now qualify to be off of your record, because what we found out is pre-pandemic, during Georgia's booming economy, employers needed workers as much as workers needed jobs. Like the 1,000 open jobs at the airport right now. They can't hire enough people because they have criminal records. So now there's a movement in the private sector to be more forgiving of nonviolent only, as I say, criminal records, so that people can continue to get back to work and help the economy overall. So the movement is moving forward, and more opportunities are available. We just need more conscientious prosecutors who are willing to buy into criminal record expungements like they do in Fulton and DeKalb and many of the metro areas, to put on these expungement fairs that allocate resources to have an expungement division, so that the prosecution offices, which are the only offices that can remove something from someone's record, can be more proactive in helping people. But for your violent offenders, the law still remains locked down as to whether the public should be on notice about their previous violent history.
Thank you, Judge
And
Johnson.
if I can,
Yes,
address
Judge
that,
Oliver.
So, and again, that goes back to information. Yet again, Judge Johnson, since the January 19th, the City of East Point Solicitor's Office has been doing a restriction drive for expungement since January 19th. I think maybe there may be 5 or 10 people who've applied.
Wow.
It was published, it was in the news, it's still going on. If you go on the website under the court or solicitor, you'll probably still see where you can get the application, fill the application out and send that information in. But if people don't know or they don't utilize it, and I know that the Solicitor General in the city in Fulton County has done it several times. But again, if you don't avail yourself of it, if you don't know how to, then you find yourself back in this position. But there are opportunities out there for people if it suits. Now, everybody is not suitable for restriction or expungement, clearly. But if it is, at least you'll know whether you can. I can tell you this, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Judge Anderson?
I feel like Judge Johnson and Judge Oliver did a great job kind of summarizing what it takes. I just don't feel like there's really anything I can add really to them. They were just
you got a few, do you want to talk about anything before we go into closing?
Oh, just anything.
Anything.
Well, I will just say that I really do appreciate you having us on, Ms. Damita. I think it's been great.
Oh, I didn't want you to talk about that. Excuse me. I want you to talk about anything.
Oh, what do you got me to talk about?
Anything, court, anything. But
Anything
you
about
ain't got to thank me.
I will say, I have enjoyed, I know Judge Leftridge pointed this out, I have enjoyed the Zoom to some extent. I miss everybody in my courtroom. But there are some things, and I think most judges can agree, there are some things that are going to stay as far as virtually. I think Judge Sellers pointed out about the efficiency, especially with civil cases, that you can hop from county to county sitting right in your home. As you know, you can have your slippers on as long as you have a business on the top and, you know, cozy on the bottom, as they say. So I do think there's some things that there have been some bright spots with the pandemic. There's also, we've talked a lot about the bad that has come with the pandemic, but I do think it's always important to point out that I think there are some things that are moving more efficiently. I have not signed, well, I say that, but for the most part, I have not actually signed a piece of paper as far as an order. Really, since the pandemic started, it really, you know, kick-started moving to electronic records. I know judges were somewhat reticent to start moving towards that. So it's nice to have a paperless system. It's nice to not be printing off lots of trees and saving, you know, taxpayer dollars from that standpoint. So I think there's been some great things that have come from the pandemic. And, you know, I think all of us can agree. You know, spending more time with family, having a 2-year-old and 5-year-old at home sometimes makes it difficult to Zoom, which is why I'm in my office. But, you know, I think it's been fun to have that family time that we wouldn't necessarily have otherwise.
Thank you.
Is that anything? Is that,
That's
is
good.
that-
You want to go on and give your closing remarks, and then we'll move on to,
I do
Judge
appreciate you having us on, Ms. Damita. It's been great. I am particularly honored to be part of this panel of such stellar group of women. You know, I think it's been the year of the woman. Hopefully it will continue that way. And I'm just particularly proud and thank you for having me come on.
Thank you. And I know you're going to be up for re-election, what, next year?
Next year, May
Okay, so
2022.
we'll be talking at the year of the woman.
Yes,
We
hopefully.
still got to have our men, but the year of the woman.
Yes.
Judge Sellers.
So thank you again, Ms. Chatman, for having me. I know each of these ladies, and I will tell you that both Fulton and DeKalb are absolutely lucky to have a group of women, in addition to some others, who are just really have a servant's heart. And have a heart for the people that they serve. And ultimately, that's what you want as a judge, right? As a judge, half the people that you see every day will be angry with you because you will not have done what it is that they've wanted you to do. Every single day that you go to work, half the people who you've encountered will not be happy with the decision that you've made. And I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to still do the job with a smile and with a heart for the people. And so thank you again, Ms. Chatman, for having me. I'm honored to be on a panel of such outstanding and accomplished women. Thank you again.
Thank you. Judge Oliver.
Thank you, Ms. Chatman, for the invitation. I know you did not know me until today, so I certainly appreciate being in the room with women that I know for sure, that are great servants for our community. I am in a position where I'm actually up for reappointment, and it's on tonight's agenda for the next 4 years. So hopefully that will pan itself out. If not, I'll be back on here telling you how I'm running for somebody's office. I don't know who, but I love what I do. I love how it affects and impacts the community. The municipal court is the first court that most people see. On average, I can see up to 200 people in a day, and that's 200 lives impacted, plus another 400 because they're normally interconnected with other people. And how they see the court and how they perceive what we do impacts our community greatly. Because if I have a bad session where someone is not seeing the court in the best light and they get in trouble again, it does not bode well for them dealing with state, superior, or even juvenile or probate court, because they won't avail themselves of the things that are there for them because they've had such a bad first impression. So we are the court of first impression, and we want to make sure that it is a stellar look and something that someone wants to come back to the court system and sees us not just as problem solvers and gatekeepers to the jail, but as a way to gain solutions, and sometimes very positive solutions. Adoptions and other things are very positive. So I don't want people to look at the court system as all negative, because it's not. There's some very wonderful things that happen in the court system, and we just definitely want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Judge Oliver. Judge Williams.
So this has just been an absolutely amazing discussion. And so thank you all for having me on. Thank you to the viewers and the listeners for tuning in, because certainly without you all, this platform would not exist. And so thank you for that and for availing yourself to resources and to the community programs that are going on to help give people knowledge. So here's what I'd like to close with. We are right now living in unprecedented times, navigating very difficult and uncharted waters. And so my message to everyone is twofold. So first, with regard to the judicial system, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, judges aren't doing anything right now. Y'all just sitting at home. Judge Leftridge and I park right next to each other at the courthouse. So I can tell you, I see her car almost every single day, just like she probably sees my car almost every single day, depending on what time we come and what time we leave, right? And so the court system is still moving. It's just not necessarily moving at the pace, perhaps, that you would like to see it moving. However, it is still moving by way of Zoom, by way of folks coming into court on absolute emergencies, and other aspects that the courts are using to make sure that we are trying to efficiently, effectively, and excellently serve the community and meet the needs of the community and meet the community where it is, while still maintaining safe havens for everybody. You know, I have a cough right now. I do not have COVID. However, I try to stay away from folks because when I cough, people like, oh my God. And I'm like, no, I have allergies. You'll hear me sneezing too. And being in the courthouse, they haven't adjusted the temperature. And on my bench, it blows right into my face. And so that's just kind of how it works, right? But just showing some grace. And then the second message I have for folks is that community is all about sharing. And in these times that we're living in, we need to make sure that we are sharing with one another, sharing our resources, sharing grace and showing some grace, sharing knowledge with one another about things that are going on, resources that are available to folks, programs, etc., sharing patience with ourselves and with one another. And then last, but certainly not least, sharing prayers. So, I'm very much a person of faith. So not only praying for ourselves and our inner circle and those people who, we surround ourselves with in our intimate circle, but also just praying for folks, period. Because a lot of folks out there are struggling. I've had the benefit of COVID not impacting me to the extent that it has impacted a lot of folks. But at the end of the day, I still pray every single day for healing on our world and for us to be able to come out and play because it benefits everybody.
Thank you. Judge Johnson, your closing remark.
Ms. Chatman, again, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you bringing us together, this amazing group of women who have a heart for service and community. And Ms. Chatman, I often joke with you about you are the godmother of South Fulton. And I thank you for taking up and coming elected officials and those that are in leadership positions and presenting them before the community, guiding them and checking their platforms to make sure that they are for the better good. And so I want to close by saying that we all know that we are going through a pandemic unlike any other that we've seen before. And it is going to take us pulling together to get through this. Better days are ahead, but we've got people that are starving. We've got people that are in bad situations. We've got confusion. Our government is in a place of distress. And while, again, brighter days are ahead, it requires all of us to chip in. So when we see situations like the water boys, who some people viewed as entrepreneurs, others viewed as threats, we've got to come up with a way to address them. When we see situations such as expungements and jobs becoming available, but people can't get them because they've got some youthful misstep on their record, we've got to find ways to help them. When we see the law not being reflective and not speaking to the time, we have to be cognizant. As judges, we can't advocate either way, but as citizens, you all can advocate for more convenience, for other safeguards to be in place other than showing up in person. So everyone can do their part based on what piece they're interested in, and together we will get through this. And the benches, a state superior magistrate, a Fulton, DeKalb, any county in Georgia, we are here to be a part of that solution. So thank you for entrusting us in these roles, and we look forward to continued service.
Thank you. Before I go to Judge Leftridge, before you guys sign out, they want to take some pictures in the back, so everybody just stay put. But before I go with Judge Leftridge, I'm going to say this with good faith that Judge Oliver, you will be appointed back to that seat. And we're going to speak in existence for Judge Anderson. And all you guys, like I said, I met Judge Anderson fighting for cityhood. And I picked up I think they try to think I'm the oldest out of the judges. I picked up 4 daughters because I didn't have but 1 son, but I picked up 4 daughters when they were fighting for and going to for the candidacy. So thank you guys. We're going to give it to Judge Leftridge.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chatman, for inviting me to be a part of this panel of wonderfully dynamic judges, all of whom I know, and giving us an opportunity to speak. I have to tell you, I would be lying if I didn't. When I got the invitation to show up today, I've been waiting for this all weekend long. I came on early, I had to make sure everything was together. I was technologically sound, everything was, because I really have been looking forward to coming on and being a part of this, because it feels like a conversation with you. It just feels like you're sitting around, and in these times where we're not able to connect in the way that we want to socially, you look forward to being in a safe place, being in a safe room to talk about the things that really matter. So thank you for this opportunity on that level. Secondly, I'd like to say that we all know that there's an adage out there, the wheels of justice turn slowly. Well, that was before COVID, and they're turning even more slowly. But I think we all want everyone to know that your judiciary is doing the very, very best that it can. We love what we do, and we are fighters. All right, we wouldn't be in this position if we weren't the type of people to advocate on behalf of the people that we represent as judges. So we want to see justice prevail through COVID, and we're going to see to it that happens. So by any means necessary in that regard. And thank you.
Thank you guys. And we're gonna have this thing again. We had some judges that we wanted in, but if we had all of them, then we couldn't, run out of time. But we're going to be having some more panels and looking for some solutions. I like solutions. It's a lot of, everybody got problems, but let's find some solutions to not only help our young kids, but the people that's in the system. Just let's find some solutions. I want to thank you guys for coming. It's been great. I want to thank the producer for giving me the opportunity for this. Again, I just want to thank you women for just being who you are. Judge Oliver, you part of my family now. Thank you guys so much. Okay, producer, you want to take them pictures before we sign off? Thank you guys so much. She done took the pictures and we'll send it to you. Thank you guys.
Thank you.